Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to make candied jalapenos, also known as Cowboy Candy. I'm Rebecca from StockingMyPantry.com. I've been growing jalapeno peppers in my AeroGarden. I've used some of them in cooking, and I also plan to make jalapeno poppers with some of them. But I hadn't gotten around to doing that, and a lot of the peppers were turning red. So I knew that I needed to do something with them. I then got the idea to make candied jalapenos, also known as Cowboy Candy. I knew that this would be easy to make and that it would only require ingredients I already had on hand. So I decided to harvest all of the jalapenos that had turned red along with some of the green ones. Now, generally speaking, when you can, you don't need to sterilize your jars. However, in this case, I decided to do so because since I'm working with such a small amount of jalapenos, I'm not going to actually can them. I'm just putting them in the fridge. If you do want to sterilize your jars, boil the jars for 10 minutes if you're at an elevation of 1,000 feet or less, adding a minute for every 1,000 feet of elevation. So you can see here how many jalapenos I decided to harvest. There are 13 of them, with some of them being very small. Look at this really little guy. You can also see that the jalapenos have stretch marks on them. This indicates that they are fully grown and won't get any bigger. Now it's time to prepare the jalapenos. Just cut off the end of the jalapenos and then slice them about 1/4 inch thick. I really like the way that some of these are half green and half red. They're so pretty. Now let's slice up the rest of them. Now you'll notice that I used my bare hands when I slice these up. If you want to be really careful, you could use gloves because you can end up with the seeds and the membranes can really get into your skin and cause it to burn quite a bit if you like rub your nose or your eyes or anything like that. But I just decided to live dangerously and didn't use gloves, and then washed my hands afterwards. This one here is the largest of all of them. Here's that itty bitty guy. Aren't these beautiful? Okay, so now it's time to make the syrup. I'm using 1/2 cup of white vinegar. And you could use apple cider vinegar if you wanted to, but I generally prefer white myself. And then you add in 1 cup of sugar. You'll turn it on medium-high heat and you'll cook and stir until it comes to a boil. And you can also, by the way, put in different spices such as mustard seeds, turmeric, other things like that. But I just really wanted the flavor of the jalapenos to shine through, so I decided not to do that. Okay, so once you've added all of your ingredients into the syrup, you bring it to a boil on medium-high heat, and you stir frequently during this time. You can see it's starting to get a little bit warm, but it hasn't come to a boil quite yet. You can see that it has now come to a full boil, and so at this point I'm turning the heat down to kind of medium low, and you just kind of keep stirring and cooking until the sugar dissolves completely. Okay, once the sugar has dissolved completely, you dump in your jalapenos. And you cook and you stir those. You don't need to stir constantly at this point, but you keep cooking them until the jalapenos turn like a vibrant green, or in this case some of them are red color, and this usually takes about 3 to 4 minutes. Basically, while you're cooking them like this, you're doing so because you want them to really absorb the syrup and the flavor of the syrup. You want it to penetrate the jalapenos completely. And see, I keep stirring just because I don't want anything to scorch or burn, but I might have overdone it. You really don't need to stir that much. But I also don't want them to foam up and boil over, although I have these in a deep enough pot that probably wouldn't happen. You can see the jalapenos are starting to turn a different color. So I've turned the heat off and they're now cooling down just a little bit. And I'm going to let them just cool down for a couple of minutes before I put them into the jars. Or actually jar, it'll probably just be one jar. Okay, so I have one of the jars that I've sterilized here. It's a pint-sized jar, and I've got my funnel, and I'm just going to scoop the jalapenos into the jar, and then I'll top them with syrup. Now remember that I'm not actually canning these, but I will put the instructions up on the video in case you want to can them. If I was making more, I would can them, but I know that I will eat these before they go bad, so I'll just be putting them in the fridge. By the way, here are some ideas of how to eat these. The main thing I've done with them is just spreading some cream cheese on some toast or on a bagel, and then putting the jalapenos on. You can see how pretty they look in the jar, and it's interesting because I had a pint jar and yet they didn't even fill up the pint. Probably a half a pint would have been okay. I probably didn't need as much syrup, but I figured there was no reason not to put all the syrup on. So I went ahead and topped it off with the syrup. And then I'm just wiping the rim. Even though I'm not canning it, I'm wiping the rim just to get rid of any of the sticky syrup residue. And then I'm just going to use a plastic jar rather than a regular canning jar since I'm not canning it. I'm going to just put that jar on, and then I'm going to let them cool and until they get closer to room temperature, and then I'll stick them in the fridge and we'll be enjoying them. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, I would really appreciate it if you would like the video, and if you haven't already done so, if you would subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.